The Arizona desert stretched endlessly beneath a blistering sun, a cruel expanse of dust, wind, and silence. Rancher Cole Maddox guided his horse, Buck, through the shimmering heat, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of life or trouble. The storm that had raged through the night had left the land scarred and unfamiliar, fencing torn down, water troughs overturned, and the air still thick with grit. He needed to find his stray cattle before coyotes or rustlers did. But as he rode, something else caught his eye, a glint of movement by the dry creek bed below. Cole reined in Buck, squinting against the sun. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, but as he descended the ridge he saw them, two figures lying still in the dust, half covered in sand and storm debris. His hand went instinctively to the rifle slung across his saddle. Two Apache women, young, their skin sun-browned and clothes torn, one of them clearly injured. For a long moment, Cole just sat there, torn between instinct and conscience. The frontier had hardened him. He'd lost friends and family to Apache raids, his own father among them. The memory of that night still burned in him. Smoke, screams, horses spooked, his mother's sobs. His jaw tightened. He'd promised himself never to trust one of them again. And yet, he couldn't ride away. He dismounted slowly, keeping his rifle ready, and called out, "You alive?" The older of the two stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She was striking in a fierce, weathered way. Ayanna, he would later learn. She raised an arm to shield her face, then struggled to sit up. The younger girl, maybe 16, didn't move at all except for the faint rise and fall of her chest. Cole approached cautiously, scanning the area for ambush. But there was nothing, no tracks, no horses, no signs of others nearby. "Just two women abandoned to the desert. You speak English?" he asked. Ayanna's lips parted, dry and cracked. "Water," she rasped. Cole hesitated, then pulled a canteen from his saddle. "Don't try anything," he muttered, handing it to her. She took it, guiding it to the younger girl's lips first, letting her drink before taking a sip herself. That small act, so instinctively protective, did something to Cole's guarded heart. He studied them both. The younger one's leg was badly cut, maybe from falling on rocks during the storm. If he left them there, they wouldn't last till sundown. Cole sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and looked up at the empty sky. "Damn it," he murmured under his breath. "I'm gonna regret this." He slung the younger sister across his saddle, careful not to hurt her, and helped Ayanna climb up behind. The horse shifted under the weight, but Cole steadied him. He mounted and turned back toward the ranch. The ride was long and silent, broken only by the creak of leather and the low groan of wind across the plains. When the ranch finally came into view, a lonely house surrounded by split-rail fences and a few scattered cattle, Ayanna's eyes widened. She whispered something in Apache to her sister, who stirred weakly. Cole caught only a single word: safe. He led them inside, clearing off his old cot and fetching water. The sisters sat quietly by the fire, their eyes darting around the room as though measuring his every move. The air between them was thick with tension, gratitude and mistrust in equal measure. As night fell, Cole leaned against the door frame, watching them from the shadows. He didn't know who they were or why they'd been left to die, but one thing was certain: their arrival had changed the stillness of his world forever. And as coyotes howled beyond the fence line, a new and uneasy chapter began on the Maddox ranch. The night came quickly, as it often did on the frontier, blue fading to black in the span of a breath. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool but heavy with that strange silence that follows chaos. Inside the Maddox ranch house, the fire crackled in the hearth, throwing orange light across rough timber walls. Cole sat at the table, his hat pulled low, a steaming tin cup of coffee between his calloused hands. Across from him, the two Apache sisters huddled close to the fire, wrapped in old quilts he'd found in the chest upstairs. The younger one, Tala, slept fitfully, her face pale, her injured leg bandaged with torn linen. Her sister Ayanna sat awake, watchful and still. She hadn't said more than a few words since they arrived, Cole's dog, Buster, growled low in his throat when she moved. The rancher gave a short whistle and the dog went quiet, though the unease in the room didn't fade. He cleared his throat. "You both came a long way from Apache Ridge," he said, testing her reaction. Ayana's eyes flicked up, unreadable. "Storm took us," she said slowly, her accent soft but distinct. "We walk many suns," he nodded, sipping his coffee. "You got a tribe nearby?" "No tribe now," she answered, the faintest tremor in her voice. "We only sisters." The words settled heavy in the air. Cole studied her face. High cheekbones, a faint scar along her jaw, a mixture of strength and sadness. She couldn't have been much older than 20. "Can't stay out there," Cole muttered after a while, mostly to himself. "Coyotes, no water. Desert eats people alive." Ayana looked at him then, really looked at him, her dark eyes steady. "Why you help us?" she asked quietly. Cole didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire, the flames dancing over his tired features. "Guess I ain't the kind of man who leaves folks to die," he said finally. "Even if they might be Apache." Her gaze dropped. "Many white men would," she said. He didn't deny it. The silence stretched between them, filled with the pop and hiss of burning wood. Outside, the wind rustled through the mesquite trees, and a lone coyote called from somewhere beyond the pasture. Cole stood, checked that the rifle was still by the door, and began to pace slowly. He wasn't sure what unsettled him more, the memory of the raids or the feeling that this woman's presence stirred something deeper, something he didn't want to name. Ayana watched him with quiet curiosity. "You live alone?" He nodded. "Wasn't always," he said. "Had family once. They're gone now." Her expression softened. "War takes much from all people," she said. That truth hung between them like a fragile bridge. For the first time, Cole felt the edge of his suspicion dull just a little. But when he turned away, he caught the sisters exchanging a glance, quick, quiet, and secret. A chill went down his spine. He couldn't shake the stories he'd heard. Ranchers ambushed after taking in Apache women, using kindness as bait. As the hour grew late, he set a lantern by the window and said gruffly, "You can stay till your sister's strong enough to ride, but I'll be keeping my door locked at night. Understand?" Ayana gave a small nod. "We understand, Rancher Maddox." He lingered a moment longer before retiring to his room. Through the thin walls, he could hear the sisters murmuring softly in Apache, words he couldn't understand, though the tone of them set his nerves on edge. He lay down on his bed, the rifle within reach, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling. They were guests, but they were also strangers. And on the frontier, strangers were the most dangerous kind of company. 3 days passed since the sisters arrived at the Maddox Ranch, and the rhythm of Cole's life had shifted into something both strange and uneasy. He wasn't used to company, especially not from Apache women. Yet, each morning, when he stepped into the kitchen, he found Ayana already awake, tending the fire, brewing coffee the way she'd seen him do it. She moved with quiet grace, her long black hair tied neatly, her expression calm but distant. The younger one, Tala, was healing well. Cole had done his best to clean her wound, and Ayana kept a poultice of herbs pressed against it. It seemed to help. Sometimes he caught them laughing softly together in their native tongue, a sound that unsettled him more than it should have. It wasn't that it was harsh. It was beautiful, melodic, but it reminded him that they were from a world he didn't understand, a world that had once taken everything from him. He told himself he'd send them on their way soon. Maybe when Tala could ride. Maybe tomorrow. But each time he thought of it, he found a reason to wait just a little longer. That evening, the wind picked up again. The sky glowed orange and red as the sun dipped behind the distant hills. Cole and Ayana worked in silence, repairing the fence the storm had broken. She moved deftly, her hands sure. He found himself admiring her strength, then quickly looking away. When the work was done, they sat by the fire outside, eating cornbread and beans. Tala dozed beside them, wrapped in a quilt. "You've done much for us," Ayana said softly, her voice barely above the crackle of flames. Cole shrugged. "Would have done it for anyone." "Not everyone would," she replied. He looked at her then, really looked. Her eyes caught the firelight, dark and reflective like deep river water. "You speak English well," he said. "My father learned," she answered. "He wanted peace with white men once." Cole hesitated. "Once?" She didn't answer, just stared into the fire. That silence told him everything. Later, as darkness fell thick and heavy, they retreated indoors. Cole checked the doors and windows, then went to his room. He didn't lock it this time, but he kept the revolver close. The house grew quiet, save for the creak of the timbers and the restless moan of the wind outside. Cole lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of his father. The old man had been kind, too kind, maybe, and it had cost him his life. Cole's throat tightened at the thought. Then he heard it, soft voices, whispering. He sat up slowly, listening. The sound came from the other side of the wall, Ayanna and Tala speaking in Apache. Their tones were hushed but urgent. He couldn't make out the words, but one thing was clear. They were planning something. He swung his legs off the bed and crept toward the door, his bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The sisters' voices grew clearer, the cadence fast and secretive. Then he heard a few words he recognized, spoken in broken English. "The white man's horse. The canyon." "Before dawn." Cole froze. His heart thudded in his chest. The canyon? That was miles east, the perfect place for an ambush. He stepped back quietly, every muscle taut. He'd offered them his home, his food, his trust, and now it seemed they were plotting against him. But still, a part of him hesitated. He'd seen their kindness, their fear. Could it all be a lie? He returned to his cot, staring into the darkness. The whispers continued a while longer, then faded into silence. Cole lay awake long after, a decision forming in his mind. If they meant to betray him, he would find out soon enough. Tomorrow night, he told himself. He would feign sleep and finally learn the truth about the Apache sisters. Sleep never came easy for Cole that night. The whispers of the Apache sisters rolled through his mind like distant thunder, low and unsettling. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces lit by firelight. Ayanna's calm, unreadable expression, and Tala's frightened eyes glancing toward the window, as if expecting someone in the dark. He'd lived through enough danger on the frontier to trust his instincts. Something wasn't right. He could feel it in his bones, the same cold tension that came before ambushes, before gunfire in the night. He sat up, staring into the blackness of his small room, the rifle resting across his knees. Outside, the wind scraped against the wooden walls, carrying the smell of dust and sagebrush. The horses in the corral shifted uneasily. Cole rose and stepped to the window, peering through the moonlit haze. Nothing moved but the ghostly branches of a mesquite tree swaying in the distance. Still, he couldn't shake the thought of what he'd heard the night before. The white man's horse. The canyon. Before dawn. He rubbed a hand over his face, muttering under his breath, "What the hell are you planning?" By morning, he'd made up his mind. If the sisters were plotting something, he needed proof. He'd let them believe he trusted them, let them act without suspicion, and when the moment came, he'd be ready. The day passed in tense silence. Ayanna was her usual composed self, tending to the fire and preparing breakfast. She offered him a faint smile as though nothing had changed, but Cole's return smile was forced and hollow. Tala limped about, helping with chores, her young face pale and quiet. Once, Cole caught her watching him with something like guilt. Or was it fear? He couldn't tell anymore. He worked on mending the barn roof through the afternoon, his mind spinning with doubts. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe their talk had meant something else entirely. But out here, a man didn't survive by giving strangers the benefit of the doubt. When evening came, Ayanna cooked a pot of stew from what was left of the dried venison. The smell filled the cabin, warm and familiar, yet Cole's stomach twisted with unease. The sisters ate little, exchanging short glances that didn't escape his notice. After dinner, he pushed back from the table. "Long day," he muttered. "Think I'll turn in early?" Ayanna nodded politely. "Good night, Rancher Maddox." Her tone was smooth, almost too calm. Cole retreated to his room, heart pounding in his chest. He set his revolver beneath the blanket where he could reach it quickly, then eased himself onto the cot. He took off his boots but left everything else on, shirt, jeans, belt, ready for whatever the night brought. Then, with slow, deliberate breaths, he pretended to sleep. Through his half-closed eyes, he watched the thin line of light under his door. Shadows moved across it, soft footsteps, muffled voices. He stilled his breathing, every sense straining. The sisters were whispering again. He couldn't make out every word, but he heard Ayanna's voice, low and commanding. "Not yet," she said in broken English. "When he sleeps deep." "We wait!" Cole's pulse thundered in his ears. He gripped the revolver's handle, his mind racing. Wait for what? Minutes passed like hours. The fire in the hearth popped. A coyote howled somewhere beyond the pasture. Then came the words that made the hair rise on his neck. Ayanna whispered something sharp and fast in Apache, too fast for him to catch, then said in English, "At sunrise it will be done." Cole's jaw clenched. Whatever it was, he'd know soon enough. He didn't move. Didn't blink, just lay there in the darkness, breathing slow and steady like a man deep in slumber. But behind closed eyes, his mind was burning with a single chilling thought. The test had begun, and by morning, one of them might not live to see the sun. The night stretched long and restless, every sound magnified inside the small cabin, the tick of the cooling stove, the slow crackle of dying embers, the whisper of wind against the window pane. Rancher Cole Maddox lay still on his cot, every muscle coiled like a wire, his breaths even and measured. His revolver rested in his right hand beneath the blanket. He had been pretending to sleep for nearly an hour. Through the thin wall, he could hear the Apache sisters moving softly in the main room. Ayanna's voice rose and fell like the rhythm of a quiet storm, while Tala's sounded timid, uncertain. Their words came in Apache mostly, quick and low, but now and then one slipped into English, just enough to make Cole's pulse quicken. He heard the scrape of a chair. Footsteps approached the doorway. A shadow darkened the line of light under his door. He slowed his breathing to the faintest rhythm. Then came Ayanna's voice, close now, clear as a bell in the stillness. "He sleeps." Tala's reply trembled. "We should go before dawn. If they find us here, they will not," Ayanna cut in, calm and sure. "He must not die." "Not yet." Cole's heart slammed against his ribs. "Not yet?" The words chilled him. He forced himself to stay still, though every instinct screamed to grab the revolver and spring up. Ayanna's tone softened. "He saved us. That is truth. But the truth he carries, he does not know." Tala sniffed, her voice breaking. "He will hate us when he learns." "Maybe," Ayanna said almost like a sigh. "But hate is better than blood." Cole's brow furrowed. The sisters weren't speaking like assassins or thieves. Their tone was mournful, conflicted. Still, her words made no sense. "What truth?" He cracked his eyelids just enough to see faint shapes moving by the hearth. The light from the fire threw their silhouettes onto the wall, Ayanna kneeling beside her sister, holding her hand, the amulet around her neck glinting faintly. Tala's shoulders shook as she whispered something, and Ayanna hushed her gently, stroking her hair like a mother would a frightened child. "You promised, father," Tala said softly. "But if the white man learns—" "I keep my promise," Ayanna interrupted. "At sunrise, we tell him. He must know before they come." Cole's fingers tightened on his revolver. "Before who comes?" Ayanna stood, her shadow long against the wall. "Sleep now," she said to her sister. "The spirits will test him at dawn. We will see if his heart is as kind as his father's." Then the floorboards creaked. Her footsteps moved toward the door, then outside, fading into the night. The door groaned as she eased it open, then shut again softly. Cole stayed frozen, his mind spinning with questions that only deepened the dread curling in his gut. He had expected a betrayal, an ambush maybe, but not this strange, cryptic talk of truths and tests. Minutes passed, then hours. The fire burned low, its light flickering against the walls like restless ghosts. Cole barely dared to move until he heard the faint sound of the door open again and close. Ayanna had returned. She settled near the hearth, murmuring a quiet prayer in Apache that Cole didn't understand. When silence finally swallowed the room, he opened his eyes fully, staring into the darkness. The gun felt heavy in his hand, but the weight in his chest was heavier. They must not die. Not yet. He must know before they come. The phrases echoed in his head like thunder rolling over empty plains. Outside, the first hint of dawn began to pale the horizon. Whatever waited for him with that sunrise, he knew it wasn't just danger, it was revelation. And as he lay there, pretending to sleep beneath a sky turning gray, the rancher realized that the sisters' secret might be far more dangerous than any ambush. The morning broke slow and gray, a thin veil of mist hanging over the desert like smoke after battle. Cole Maddox rose before the sun as he always did, but today, something in the air felt heavier, thicker. His mind was still knotted with the fragments of what he'd overheard in the night. He must not die, not yet. He must know before they come. Those words clung to him like burrs on a saddle blanket. He pulled on his boots and stepped into the main room. The sisters were already awake. Ayanna stood by the window, her dark hair falling loose down her back, while Tala sat by the fire stirring a pot of coffee. The scent of roasted beans filled the air, warm and familiar, but it did little to ease the tension coiled in his gut. "Morning," Cole said carefully. Ayanna turned. Her eyes met his, steady, unreadable, the same calmness that unnerved him since the day they met. "Morning, Rancher Maddox," she said. "You two were up late last night," he said, his voice even. A flicker crossed her face, but she didn't answer right away. "We had things to remember," she said finally. Cole didn't push it. Not yet. Instead, he poured himself some coffee and leaned against the table. The sisters ate quietly, though Tala's eyes darted to her sister more than once, as if seeking reassurance. When the meal was over, Cole went outside to tend to the horses. The storm had left the corral a muddy mess, but it wasn't the mud that drew his attention. It was something glinting near the water trough. He bent down, brushing away the dirt. It was a small carved amulet, made from bone, strung with leather, engraved with a symbol he recognized instantly, the crest of Chief Greyhawk. Cole's breath caught. He'd seen that mark before, on wanted posters, on the remains of burnt-out homesteads, and on the handle of the spear that had taken his father's life. He turned the amulet over in his hand, his stomach twisting. Was it theirs, or had they taken it from someone else? He strode back inside, jaw set. Ayanna looked up as he entered, her gaze dropping immediately to what he held. For the first time, her composure cracked. "Where'd you get this?" he demanded, his voice rough. Her hand went to her neck instinctively, bare now. She swallowed hard. "It was mine," she said softly. "Yours?" Cole's voice sharpened. "You wear the mark of Greyhawk? You know what that means, don't you?" Tala flinched, her eyes wide. "Please," she whispered. "You do not understand." "Then make me understand," Cole snapped. "Because that mark right there? It belonged to the man who killed my father." Silence filled the cabin, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the low hiss of the fire. Ayanna met his gaze, her voice trembling but resolute. "Chief Greyhawk was our father, too." Cole felt the ground shift beneath him. For a heartbeat, he couldn't breathe. "What did you say?" "Our father?" she repeated, standing tall, though her eyes glistened with pain. "Greyhawk, you call him enemy. We called him Adani, father." Cole's hand tightened around the amulet. His mind reeled. The faces of burned barns, dead cattle, and his father's body flashed before him. Rage flared, but so did confusion. "You come here into my home wearing his sign, and you expect me to feed you? Shelter you?" Ayanna stepped forward. "We came not to harm you. We came because you must know the truth before they come." He stared at her. "Who's coming?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "Our people. The ones who still follow the path of war. They will come here at dawn tomorrow. But they must not kill you. You are not like the others. You are the son of the man who once spared our brother's life." Her words struck him silent. Cole's world, built on hate, loss, and the memory of blood, tilted and broke apart. The sisters weren't his enemies. They were the daughters of his father's killer, and they had come not for revenge, but for something far stranger. As Ayanna's eyes held his, he felt the first tremor of realization. His father's mercy years ago had rippled into this moment, and now it might be the only thing that could save his life. The wind carried the dry scent of mesquite and dust across the plains as rancher Cole Maddox saddled his horse that morning. The sun was barely a red streak on the horizon, but already the world felt different, charged, as though the desert itself held its breath. Ayanna stood a few yards away, her hair braided tight, her expression solemn. Tala clung to her arm, pale and trembling. Neither of them had slept. Cole hadn't either. The revelation from the night before still echoed through him. They were the daughters of Chief Greyhawk, the man he'd hated all his life. Now, they wanted him to ride with them to the canyon. He had refused at first, his voice hard with anger. "I should turn you both over to the marshal in Tucson," he'd said. But Ayanna's eyes, steady, fearless, had stopped him cold. "If you do," she told him, "your blood will be on their hands by tomorrow's sun. Ours, too." She'd spoken with such certainty that it made the hairs rise on the back of his neck. Against every instinct he had, Cole had agreed to go. Now, as he tightened Buck's reins, he still didn't understand why. "You lead," he muttered. "But if this is a trick, you'll regret it before your next breath." Ayanna simply nodded. "We do not lie, Rancher Maddox. You will see." The three of them rode out across the open desert, the horses' hooves stirring soft clouds of dust. The land stretched in all directions, vast, silent, and cruelly beautiful. The red cliffs of the canyon rose in the distance, their jagged shadows long and sharp in the morning light. For hours, no one spoke. Cole's mind churned with questions, none of which he trusted himself to ask. He couldn't shake the image of his father, kind, patient, standing between wounded men after the raid years ago, refusing to shoot when others did. "Mercy is harder than hate, son," his father had said. That's why it matters. He hadn't understood those words until now. When they reached the canyon's edge, Ayanna dismounted first. She stood at the rim, looking down into the vast hollow below. Her face softened with something like sorrow. "This place," she said quietly, "is where our father made his last promise." Cole joined her, keeping one hand near his revolver. Below them, the canyon floor opened wide, a hidden valley scattered with mesquite and sage. And down there, faint but clear, he saw movement. Riders, a dozen, maybe more. His pulse spiked. "You led me into a trap," he snapped, spinning toward her. Ayanna didn't flinch. "If we meant to harm you, we would have left you sleeping in your bed." "Then what is this?" he demanded. "This," she said, her voice steady, "is what you feared most, and what may yet save you." As the riders drew closer, Cole could see them more clearly, proud men in buckskins and feathers, their faces painted in somber colors. At their head rode a tall figure, his long gray hair streaked with silver, his bearing regal and grave. Even from a distance, Cole knew who he was. Chief Greyhawk, the man he'd cursed for years, the shadow behind his father's death. The chief halted his horse a few paces away. His gaze met Cole's, and for a moment the desert seemed to go silent. Then, to Cole's astonishment, Greyhawk lifted his hand in a gesture not of war, but of peace. Ayanna stepped forward. "Father," she said in Apache. Then, turning to Cole, she translated. "He says you are welcome here, the son of the man who once showed mercy when none was given." Cole's throat tightened. The chief's expression was solemn, his eyes filled with something deeper than hatred, something closer to grief. "You brought me here for this," Cole murmured. Ayanna nodded. "You carry his legacy, Rancher Maddox, as we carry ours." And as the first rays of sunlight poured over the canyon walls, Cole realized the truth of her words. He hadn't been led to his death. He'd been led to his father's redemption, and perhaps his own. The canyon was vast and echoing, its sandstone walls glowing red beneath the rising sun. Rancher Cole Maddox sat frozen in his saddle, watching the group of Apache riders circle below like ghosts from another time. Dust shimmered in the morning light. and in the center of that haze sat Chief Greyhawk, calm and still, his gaze fixed on Cole. Ayanna and Tala had dismounted beside him, their heads bowed with quiet reverence. The air between the two worlds, the white man and the Apache, felt thin, brittle, ready to break with a single wrong word. Greyhawk rode forward slowly, his horse moving with a steady grace. When he stopped a few feet away, he spoke in Apache. His deep, steady voice rolled through the canyon, carrying weight that made even the wind fall silent. Ayanna translated softly. "He says you look like your father, the man who spared his son when the soldiers came." Cole's breath caught. "My father spared an Apache boy?" Ayanna nodded. "Years ago, near Fort Lowell. Your father found a wounded child in the ruins after a battle. The soldiers said to finish him. He refused. He hid the boy, fed him, and set him free." Cole's mind reeled. He remembered that day faintly. His father had returned home, clothes torn, blood on his hands, but eyes strangely peaceful. When Cole asked what happened, he'd said only, "I did what I had to." He never told the rest. Greyhawk dismounted and stepped closer, every line of his face carved by age and loss. He studied Cole in silence, then spoke again. Ayanna's voice trembled as she translated. "He says that boy was his youngest son, our brother. Your father's mercy saved him. When he died later in battle, Greyhawk vowed never to take vengeance against the Maddox bloodline. That promise is why you live, even now." Cole felt the air leave his lungs. He looked from Ayanna to the chief, unable to speak. "You're telling me all this fear, this hate, it didn't have to be?" Ayanna's expression was gentle but sad. "War blinds both sides. My father lost sons. You lost yours. But mercy still lives, even in the ashes." Cole looked down at his hands, strong, calloused, scarred by years of work and bitterness. He thought of all the nights he'd cursed the Apache name, the times he'd told himself hate was the only way to honor his father's death. And now, the truth cut deeper than any bullet. "I came to hate the man your father was," Cole said quietly, meeting Greyhawk's gaze. "But I reckon maybe he hated the killing as much as mine did." Greyhawk nodded slowly, understanding more than words could say. He reached into the folds of his robe and pulled out something small, an old silver pocket watch, its casing dented but still gleaming. Cole recognized it instantly. "His father's watch," he says, Ayanna whispered. "Your father gave it to him the night of the truce, when both men swore that their children would not carry their war." The weight of that promise struck Cole like a hammer. His throat tightened as he took the watch in trembling hands. "Then why now?" he asked hoarsely. "Why come back?" Ayanna's face hardened. "Because others do not honor that vow. A band of young warriors plan to strike your ranch tonight. They see your land as a symbol of what was taken. We came to warn you, to repay our father's debt." Cole's heart pounded. He looked from her to Greyhawk, realizing that this meeting wasn't just revelation, it was salvation. The old chief raised his hand solemnly. Ayanna translated one final time. "He says peace is not words, it is choice. What will you choose, Rancher Maddox? To fight or to remember?" Cole looked out across the canyon, the watch gleaming in his palm. The ghosts of his father's past, the weight of his own anger, and the two sisters who had risked everything to save him, all converged in that moment. For the first time in years, his answer came not from hate, but from something far stronger. "I'll remember," he said softly. "I'll keep your truce." And as the wind swept through the canyon, carrying the echoes of two fathers' mercy, the truth that had once divided them became the bridge that might finally heal them. The canyon lay quiet after the revelation, yet Rancher Cole Maddox could feel the storm brewing beneath that stillness. The truth about their fathers had cracked something open inside him, a wound and a healing all at once. But now came the harder part, choosing trust when every instinct screamed for caution. The Apaches began to dismount and make camp near the canyon's base. Smoke from a small fire curled into the orange morning light. Ayanna moved gracefully among them, speaking softly, while her sister Tala clung close to her side. Cole remained apart, his horse shifting beneath him, uneasy. He wanted to believe them, wanted to trust that Ayana's warning was real, but years of blood and fear were not easily washed away by words. He'd seen too many men die under the banner of peace talks gone wrong. "Rancher Maddox," Ayana called to him gently. "You look like a man who's been offered water and thinks it's poison." He managed a faint smirk. "Maybe I've just learned to check the cup before I drink." She approached him slowly, no threat in her step. "Then come see for yourself," she said. "If you are to fight what's coming, you must first understand what it is." Reluctantly, Cole dismounted and followed her toward the fire. The Apache men watched him with guarded eyes, their silence thick with history. When he sat down, Ayana gestured toward an older warrior with a scar across his jaw. "This is Kinta, one of the young men trying to stop the raid. But he says there are others who will not listen." Kinta spoke, his tone low and tense. Ayana translated. "They think you killed their kin. They think the ranch stands on stolen blood." Cole's jaw clenched. "I never killed a man who wasn't trying to kill me first." Ayana's gaze softened. "And they say the same." Her words stung not with malice, but with truth. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the crackle of fire and the distant cry of a hawk above the cliffs. Finally, Ayana broke the silence. "Tonight they come for you. If you flee, they'll burn your home. If you fight, blood will cover the land again. But if you trust me," she hesitated, eyes meeting his. "If you trust us, we can stop them without a single bullet fired." Cole stared at her. "And how exactly do I do that?" She smiled faintly, though her eyes betrayed exhaustion. "By riding with us into the valley before nightfall. We'll intercept them before they reach your ranch." It was madness. Riding with Apache into an ambush, he might as well paint a target on his chest. But something inside him, the same quiet instinct that once guided his father, told him to listen. Tala, silent until now, stepped closer. "If we meant to harm you," she said in halting English, "we would not have warned you." Her trembling sincerity was impossible to doubt. Cole nodded slowly. "Then I'll ride," he said. "But if this turns out to be a lie, it won't," Ayana interrupted softly. Before they broke camp, Gray Hawk approached him. The old chief's eyes glimmered with the weight of years. He placed his weathered hand on Cole's shoulder, a gesture both alien and familiar. "Through Ayana," he said, "my son died because men could not trust each other. Do not let that be your story." Cole met his gaze. "Then I'll see this through." When the sun began to dip below the canyon rim, the group mounted up, warriors and rancher alike. The red light painted their faces in the same hue, blurring the line between enemy and ally. Cole glanced at Ayana beside him, her eyes set on the horizon. He realized that trust wasn't about certainty, it was about choice. And tonight, as they rode toward danger together, that choice would be tested in blood and fire. The sun had bled out behind the horizon, leaving the desert in shades of violet and rust. The air grew cold, the kind of chill that crept into a man's bones and whispered warnings. Rancher Cole Maddox rode at the front beside Ayana, his rifle strapped across his back, every muscle in his body wound tight. Behind them, Gray Hawk's men fanned out silently, shadows moving like the land itself. They rode toward Maddox Ranch, where the last embers of daylight flickered on the distant hills. Cole's mind spun with the weight of what lay ahead. He could almost see it now, his barn in flames, his cattle scattered, his father's watch gleaming in the firelight. But he wasn't the same man who'd left that ranch yesterday. "Do you trust me?" Ayana's voice broke through the wind. He hesitated only a moment before answering. "I reckon I have to," she nodded. That's all trust ever is. They reached the ridge above the ranch just as night settled in full. From there, they could see movement in the valley below, figures slipping between rocks and brush, a dozen or more, their torches faint sparks in the dark. "The war party," Ayana whispered. "They're young, angry. They want blood for what they lost." Greyhawk raised his hand, signaling his riders to hold back. The old chief's face was unreadable, carved from years of loss and endurance. Then he spoke softly in Apache. Ayana translated for Cole. "He says tonight we prove whose sons we truly are. The plan was risky, mad even. They would ride down unarmed, no rifles drawn, no blades in hand. Ayanna would speak first. If she failed to reach them, they'd all die before the moon reached its height. Cole looked at her, at the courage etched into her features, and felt something stir in him, something close to reverence. "You sure this'll work?" he asked quietly. She gave a faint smile. "No, but mercy never waits for certainty." With that, they descended the slope. The night exploded in shouts when the war party spotted them. Torches flared, arrows lifted, tension thick as a drawn bowstring. Cole's horse shied, but he held steady. Greyhawk's voice boomed across the valley, commanding silence. The young Apache warriors froze. Ayanna urged her horse forward, raising both hands. She called out to them in her native tongue, words that Cole couldn't understand but felt deep in his chest. Her voice rose and broke with passion, her tone shifting from anger to pleading to something like grief. One of the young men, his face painted in crimson, shouted back furiously. Ayanna's reply was sharper this time, defiant. Cole's instinct screamed at him to grab his gun. He didn't. He forced himself to stay still. After what felt like forever, the crimson-painted warrior dismounted and strode toward Ayanna. The others watched, ready to strike. The man said something harsh and pointed a knife at Cole. Ayanna's voice softened. She reached into her saddlebag and pulled out the silver pocket watch, Cole's father's watch, and held it high for all to see. The moonlight caught its surface like a living flame. She shouted a single phrase that even Cole could understand. "Mercy is our inheritance." The young warrior stopped. His knife wavered. The rest began to murmur among themselves. Greyhawk dismounted, walking forward with the dignity of a man carrying generations on his shoulders. He spoke in a voice that trembled but did not falter. Ayanna translated through tears. "He says, 'Your father saved my son. Tonight I save his.'" The knife fell to the ground. The torches lowered one by one. Silence swept the valley. Cole exhaled shakily. The war that had simmered for decades, between fathers, sons, settlers, and tribes, was ending not with blood, but with a single act of trust honored. As dawn began to paint the desert gold, Greyhawk turned to Cole. "Your land is safe," Ayanna translated. "Our promise is kept," Cole nodded, unable to speak. He looked to Ayanna, whose eyes met his with quiet triumph. He finally understood. The test had never been about who could draw faster or ride harder. It had been about who could forgive first. And as the first light of morning touched their faces, the rancher and the Apache stood side by side, bound not by war, but by mercy.